lately, I've been getting a lot of questions from viewers about basic exposure settings. Now, as a beginner photographer, aperture, shutter speed, ISO can be a little confusing, but it is critical that you learn how to use these settings so you can take better photos. That being the case, I thought I'd put together a quick tutorial on basic exposure settings. Now bear in mind guys, this video is going to cover the basics. Each of these settings I'll discuss can be big, lengthy tutorials on their own, but you have to start somewhere, right? So stick around until the end of this video and you'll learn all the basics that you need to know about your camera. I'll also give you details of our current giveaway, which includes some amazing prizes that 4 lucky winners are going to win. So, why don't you pull up a seat? Let's go! And yes guys, we are back and we are going to start with aperture. Guys, aperture controls the amount of light that enters the camera. If you use a small aperture, like for example f/22, not much light is going to get into the camera. But if you use a larger aperture, like 1.4 for example, tons of light is going to get in. The aperture setting is also one of the things that controls the depth of field of the photo. If you use a small aperture like f/16, that depth of field, guys, is going to be super deep. This is usually what you want in a landscape photo like this. Notice how everything in the foreground going back through the background is super sharp. This allows you to see all the beauty and details within the landscapes. But if you use a large aperture, like for example f2, the depth of field is going to be really shallow. This is typically what you want for portraits. And speaking of which, notice how this model right here in this portrait is perfectly sharp. But if you notice, everything behind her is all blurred. Blurring the background like this is super helpful from a compositional standpoint because it helps you draw the attention onto the model. Next, shutter speed. Shutter speed is responsible for the duration of light, guys. The duration of the light that's hitting the sensor. If you have shutter speed like 1/500th of a second, minimizes the duration of light because the shutter is open and closed so fast. On the other hand, a long exposure like for example 1 second extends that duration and allows more light into the camera. Shutter speed is also what controls how motion looks in a photo. So if you want to freeze motion, you have a fast shutter speed. On the other hand, if you want to blur motion, what you want to do is you want to slow the shutter speed down. Let's use running water as an example to show you how shutter speed influences the look of your images. In this first example, I use a shutter speed of 1/500th of a second, and as you can see, the water is nice and sharp. The shutter opened so fast that it stopped the water's motion. Now, let's see what happens with a 1 second shutter speed. Now, as you can see with the longer shutter speed, the water's movement has been recorded and it's nice and blurry. So if you want to freeze movement, crank that shutter speed up. If you want to blur it, slow things down. Next, we have ISO. Now, ISO controls the sensitivity of the camera sensor to light. So to break this down, if you're shooting outside on a bright sunny day, you don't need the camera sensor to be sensitive to light. So you can get away with using a low ISO like something like 50 or 100. But if you're in a low light situation, for example, taking photos of your family inside the house at night, using a higher ISO like 6400 will brighten up the image. ISO also influences how much digital noise or grain there is in an image. The higher the ISO, the more grain that will be evident in the photo. Now, sometimes you want to use the grain as an artistic element in the photo, like for example in this portrait. But generally speaking, you want the lowest possible ISO for the situation. That way you can minimize the amount of noise that is shown in the photos. Now guys, we're going to bring this all together. As I've discussed, aperture, shutter speed, and ISO all have their own effects on the images, but they also must be used together to get a well-exposed shot. For example, if you open up the aperture nice and big to blur the background in the portrait, you're letting in a ton of light into the camera. To prevent the shot from being overexposed, you have to speed up the shutter, minimize the ISO, or a combination of both. As another example, if you want to blur movement in a shot, you have to slow down the shutter. And again, this means lots of light is going to be getting in there. So what you need to do is close down the aperture, minimize ISO, or a combination of both to prevent the photo from being overexposed. Something that will help you understand how these three settings work is studying the exposure triangle. We have a great tutorial on this over at Photography Talk, so I'm going to put a link in the description to that article so you can check that out. Again, we can go on for days talking about aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, and I can give you millions of examples of how these things can be manipulated to change how your photos look. But now that you have the basic introduction underneath your belt, you can start experimenting with these camera settings to see how you can use them to take the best shots. All right, guys, before I sign off, I want to give you the details of our current giveaway. We have 4 excellent prizes to give away. We have a GoPro Hero 8 Black, we have a GoPro Hero 7 Black, we have a Rode VideoMic Pro Plus, a $100 Adorama gift card, and each winner will also receive an Octopad. And this thing is so versatile. You can use this to support your camera mic, light, GoPro, you name it. I love these little things. The contest is going to run through April 15th, 2020, so you have plenty of time to take the necessary steps to enter. Step 1, like this video. Step 2, leave a comment below. In fact, the more of our videos that you watch and leave a comment on, the more chances that you have to win. So drop some comments. Step 3, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Guys, that's it. For complete details on this giveaway, check out the description below. Well, there you go, guys. A few tips to help you get that ball moving. If you found this video to be helpful, hit the like button down below. If you are currently not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And while you're at it, smash the hell out of that bell to be notified each time we come out with a new video. All right, my friends, I'm going to be jumping off here, and you get out there and take your best shot.